All right. We are now live. We're going to keep going through Kenneth Main's video. And so Sophia and Catherine are both here right now. Thank you both for joining me. And thanks for everybody in the chat. Iconic Meerkat is in the chat as well. And I have left the link to Kenneth Main's 27 report. 27 pages. Yeah. So if anybody has not read that or wants to go through it, you definitely can. And Catherine, Sophia, anything before we just jump right into this one?
I'll try really hard to be good and not swear. I can't make promises, but I'll try.
You know, Dan was kind enough to give us all the emails between him and Ken Maines.
Mm-hmm.
And that in itself was extremely enlightening.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to try to move my camera a little bit. Somehow I just can't seem to.
You got like that
be
little,
centered.
Yeah, it's like a little newscaster thing where we're like expecting a little pop-up video to pop up there on the screen.
Probably a cat will be over on the other side right here. Just pop in and say hi. Oh, as I speak, there comes one.
Speak of the, not devil, but speak of the culprit. Speak of the kitty. There it is. All right, so we're going to jump right into this. And if anybody wants to join us here, they're definitely welcome to. And otherwise, we're going to see how far we can go. We'll definitely go about 60 minutes, and we won't go 4 hours. Can't go 4 hours this time. But we'll see how far we can get because we still have a lot to go through here with Kenneth Main's. And I'm pretty sure it stopped right at where we were last time, but I'm going to move it back just a little bit just in case. All right. Looks like everybody can see the screen.
It's my opinion that David's beliefs were also soaked in by her. Even though most described her as a free thinker, she was obviously dedicated to David and they were a team. Kamel's decisions or conversation about the rapture and David's excited interest in it only weeks from the incident reinforces this belief to me. She had some email exchanges that took a harsh tone with David's family that I read. She seemed very angry and started cutting people out of her life just like her husband was doing. And the child was a typical 5-year-old child. There were some things, that I saw her talking about blood and guts and monsters that were a little disturbing for me personally when I heard it coming from a 5-year child, but, they replicate what they are around. So by all other intent and purposes, Renaya was a perfectly normal 5-year-old child. So that is victimology. Now we go to timelines. In this case, the timeline is very important. The bodies were found January 17th, 2015. But that does not mean that's when they died. So we have to try to determine when they died. And you can look at the timeline on your own. I'll leave it up here and at the end, like I said. But Christmas presents were being dropped off. The last known sighting of David was on December 24th between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. So on Christmas Eve, the neighbor says he sees David in the window across the street. Okay. Well, they're not seen again until January 17th when they're found dead. Okay.
I think maybe one thing to kind of add to that is when was the last time all three of them were seen at the same time, which would be December 19th when they picked up Rania from school. So I think that's a very important thing too. It's not just it's important to know when David was last seen, but why aren't Kamel or Rania seen anytime between December 19th and the 24th? December 24th. I find that pretty interesting.
Well, did they even do any checks? Did they check a local grocery store? Did they look for video camera footage of them? They didn't do anything. They're going on neighbors. I can't tell you the last time I saw my neighbors. I live 30 feet from them on both sides. And I can't tell you the last time I saw them. So what? That means that maybe I saw them 2 months ago. Oh, they're disappeared. Somehow they're gone and out of the way. No, you can't rely on that. And they had well, I don't know if at the time, and has Kenneth Maines actually seen the Blacklight report? Because when you follow the tracking what David is doing on his computer, it's a far different story compared to what people see and say.
Or did he even look at the phone records? Because we don't have the text coming into David or going out of David's phone to Chris Peck. We don't have the text going in and coming out from Heidi Lish. Why would they have a different app to send out texts? It was their phones, their account. So I don't understand this. It's like...
I'm with you. I don't believe that there was a separate app. I think what they did on their phone. And either these people have their timelines completely mixed up. Like we do see Heidi's phone number on Kamel's phone, but not at the time she says she was. It happened before or after. I'd have to pull it up, but it wasn't at that time. So, that's where the police and this so-called investigator, not an investigator, should have been doing their due diligence, comparing what was said with what they have as a known, and does it match up? And if they had taken 5 minutes, they would have said, okay, no. And then you toss out those statements. But they didn't do that. Instead, he holds on to it. Oh, this is the truth. This is what they say.
Yeah, exactly. And I want people to understand that in your text messages, you could go to any of those text messages. Let me pull one up here. Okay, so mine says, Ani Bev, I could go and I can change that contact to, let's see here, edit. One second.
Oh, I'm glad you're doing this.
Oh, let me not show the phone number. Oops. I'm sorry. I'm dyslexic here. To Kamel.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. Once again, I showed the to Kamel. So.
Yeah. And so it can easily look like you're talking to Kamel, just like it's easy to fake that David sent something. So this is why it behooves the police department, and it should have been, something that Kenneth Maines should know. If he truly is an investigator, you will take what somebody says and does it match up with the evidence? And we know time and again, it doesn't.
Yeah. What the last known phone calls, do either of you have that up in front of you? The last known phone calls made by David, made by Kamel.
Oh, I'd have to pull that up. Yeah.
David's was to Midas. That was in November.
Yeah.
Near the end of November.
Yeah, that's the important thing that she's trying to say, and she probably knows this better than I do, but their last communications and their last anything they did on the phone was way before anybody last saw them.
And does that include last text message too? Or you think text messages came after November? I mean, that's a long time to not be calling anybody. That doesn't mean other people weren't calling them and they didn't pick up, but for them.
No, cell phone calls and text messages. The very last was near the end of November for David. Whereas Kamel, I believe her last contact was to Wells Fargo on either December 16th or December 19th.
Yeah, I think it was late December. And then internet searches and all that they have, do those records, I haven't looked at them in a while, do they just show David's? They show some of Kamel's. So based on David's last internet search was
the blacklight report, you kind of have to try to guess who did what, because you don't know. It's just the laptop access the internet at a certain time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know who it was. But they had the Surface Pro. They had the laptop in the kitchen. They had the Mac all-in-one in the in David's office bedroom. So you have those three, at least three of those that they should have the final, whenever the last search was made, or the last known activity, I'm guessing.
Yeah, the last known activity was 12:25 at 4:09 p.m. and it was going to the Facebook Gray State movie page.
And that's from the laptop in the kitchen,
yes.
If I remember correctly.
Yes.
Okay. But what about the Surface Pro and the
did we
Mac
even get that?
I think it's mentioned they are in there. I don't know if we got as much details as we have for the
Surface Pro. They didn't give us any details in regards to that.
That's interesting.
I can go to it.
Especially when we have people that think that Kamel was actually on that Surface Pro. The Surface Pro was active while she was being killed, while she was being shot. We've heard that from a couple people, but I think Kamel's sister was the original source of that I heard. And she was just guessing. She wasn't saying this was a known fact or based on fact or anything. That was her feeling. It just made me wonder where that came from and why you would think that. But we have seen other people kind of echo that as if it's fact, when even Kamel's sister is not stating it as fact.
I think we just have item 5 and item 8. Item 8 is an iMac. That would be the computer in the bedroom?
Right.
Okay.
But nothing on the Surface Pro. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And nothing on her. Well, they don't really mention her phone either. It's all about David's phone. All right.
Yeah, I was just looking over the Vaughn report again. So.
Okay. I'll keep going with the video, and then feel free to stop if you want me to stop here.
Okay.
So when you look at the crime scene, I did, a criminal profile, a crime scene assessment. These are things that the crime scene tells me, okay? Just by looking at the crime scene, it can tell you some things and you can start deducing. These are some of the things that it told me. Number 1.
Idaho State residents, if you have a utility meter like this on the side of your house, you can get paid to go.
Add 1.
All 3 deceased.
We're going to get a few of those.
Were
today.
laying on the floor in the living room. David and the child were barefoot. That's got to tell you something, right? You can't just give an assessment and not say why it's important. That means that they were comfortable and had no indication of going or being outside. Okay? That might seem like a small thing, but it's not. It's huge. They're barefoot. It's December. It's cold. So you can assume, hey, they didn't go outside for anything. They weren't attacked from outside. You know what I mean? It's huge. They're barefoot. It's December. We're barefoot.
Wait. Who's? Let's see.
What is he talking about?
Yeah,
that's got to tell you something, right? You can't just give an assessment and not say why it's important. That means that they were comfortable and had no indication of going or being outside. Okay? That might seem like a small thing, but it's not. It's huge. They're barefoot. It's December. It's cold. So you can assume, hey, they didn't go outside for anything. They weren't attacked from outside. You know what I mean? Using the key to get into the door and somebody comes.
They weren't attacked from outside, but we have the rear slider that is clearly open. That's, I guess what he's saying is because they didn't have shoes on, it's not like they were killed outside and moved inside the house.
I'm going to call bullshit on that one because, I mean, David is a native Minnesotan. And
yeah, when I lived in the snow, I always ran outside barefoot. It's just what you do. You get used to it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying David did. I'm just saying that, again, his assessment is, although he's trying to sound logical at the moment, he's not doing a complete encompassing scenario for where this crime took place.
He is assuming a lot just based on the fact that they're barefoot. I mean, that's a lot to assume. That is not really relevant to the crime scene, I would think. But
well, I think he's, if my suspicion is correct, and I don't know because I haven't seen this, and I could be wrong, but I'm assuming he's going to try to shoot down the theory that they were taken out of the home and hurt outside of the house because he's barefoot.
Right, because people who would take them out of the home and bring them back in wouldn't remember to take their shoes off. Right?
Well, and of course they would make him put his shoes on before they left, right?
And they put him back on if they killed him. And, makes sense. Oh boy!
Comes up behind them, puts a gun to their head, and say, "Get inside now." It's not an ambush because if it was, they would have shoes on. See how important little things like that are. So David and the child were barefoot.
It's not an ambush. It's not the whole scene, the whole kitchen. I mean, you look at that. You look at the everything, the weed that was laid out, the way everything is. An ambush seems like a definite possibility. Maybe they were startled or they weren't ready for it. I don't know if I call that an ambush or anything. But he's creating a scenario just to shoot it down. Is what it sounds like.
And it's clearly, like you stated, it was a day interrupted. You know, there was in the middle of breakfast food, not to say that you couldn't have breakfast for dinner. I do it almost every day. So we don't know what meal it was, except for she was making breakfast items. And the dishwasher's left open, you know, he's there in comfortable clothes. Rania still looks like she's in her PJ type clothes. So could it be morning, night? Yeah. But that doesn't mean they couldn't have been ambushed within their home by somebody coming in. And then they use the back door as their means of travel.
Mm-hmm.
God, the guy, I don't know. How does he think? Oh, geez.
Yeah. And Iconic Meerkat is saying, I know he had an IRC app through contact with him. And that's interesting because I didn't know what an IRC app was. It's an internet relay chat. So that's interesting. I haven't heard that. And
I'll look at the Blacklight report to see if that shows up.
Nothing like that showed up on, because I listed everything on that Blacklight report is in a spreadsheet, and I didn't see anything like that. Would Iconic, because I don't know, would something like that show up as an internet search? Would you have to open the app? Because if you had to go on his laptop or computer and open it, it would show as a search.
Well, even his phone had connected to the computer and had downloaded like all the apps and everything that he had on his phone. And I don't remember that showing up.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Let's look. Okay. We'll definitely look because that's what shows up on the Blacklight report is all the different apps. So
Allah Akbar in Arabic means God is greater. Now, this was written in blood on the wall. I believe that this is done either to stage the scene to look like something that it isn't. Remember, that's what crime scene staging is. because
what I'm going to be looking for is he going to accuse David of writing that on the wall? That's going to be very important.
the motive or the event, or it's for shock value. So it's one or the other. Why is, why is something written in blood on the wall? And what does it say? Why that? Well, it's done for shock value, or it's to throw it off to make it look like something that it's not, meaning the crime. There was no organization. By that, I mean David had numerous military and electronic gadgets. There was very little organization to these items. Okay, that's what I seen at the crime scene. Yet the tools in his garage seemed to be neatly organized, unlike other items.
What's he talking about? There's no organization.
Okay, so he's trying to say that, since my take on what he's trying to say is that the disorganized crime scene fits with the disorganization of David's belongings within the house.
But not his garage.
Yeah, minus, yeah. So see, he's trying to show how it was in contrast. Look how neat and clean that is, but look at this. But what this guy, again, is failing to see, because everything was organized everywhere. They had a file cabinet, they had everything labeled, everything was organized, except for downstairs. But David just was trying to sell everything off. He's trying to get rid of the excess. That's why that area wasn't organized. I mean, how difficult is this? This is common knowledge.
Well, wouldn't that be the case if somebody was searching through the house and just disorganizing it?
They could have been tearing through things and looking and piling stuff up too. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That's pretty interesting. I was trying to follow what he was saying there, and just okay. I'm gonna go back a little bit.
Yeah.
Very little organization to these items. Okay, that's what I
to the items. See, I thought he was talking about the phones or something.
No. He's talking about all of his equipment and stuff that was downstairs in the basement. I'm assuming that's what he's talking about, because it really is in disarray down there if you think about it. But it's in piles because they had just not too long they were selling things off from their other business that he had with Mitch.
Okay.
It's one or the other. Why is something written in blood on the wall? And what does it say? Why that? Well, it's done for shock value, or it's to throw it off to make it look like something that it's not, meaning the crime.
I'm happy so far. He has not, said that David wrote that on the wall. That may be coming later, but that's a big thing where they just kind of jump the gun. A lot of people do. So far, he hasn't done that.
There was no organization. By that, I mean David had numerous military and electronic gadgets. There was very little organization to these items. Okay,
see, to the gadgets. I don't understand what he's saying.
That's what I seen at the crime scene. Yet the tools in his garage seemed to be neatly organized, unlike other items. This could mean that he did not use the tools as much as he did the electronic gadgets or military items. Therefore, they were organized when he moved into the house and then not touched them since that time. Yet it also tells me this event was not planned at the house, and the house was in normal condition. Okay, it just leads me to believe that that it's not a planned event what took place because of the disorganization in the house. Now, that certainly could be interpreted differently, but that's how I interpreted it. The word love seemed to be a constant theme in this family. The notes, stickers on the refrigerators throughout always said love. It was something that resonates to me because they seem to be a tight family. Okay, so that's important. To me, the crime scene showed that this was an impulse, not planned murder. And I gave reasons as to why that is, and I'll give more later. The choice of weapon was of convenience.
That's going to be very important when he says that this was an impulse. And I've read the 27 pages, and in order to say that, I would expected more evidence that this was an impulse. It almost seems like he's saying because of these things, because everything was kind of organized and whatever point he's making about that somehow, because it isn't one, it has to be the other. If it isn't planned, right? So he's admitting there's no proof that David planned this, but then he's also going to accuse David of committing this crime. Well, if it wasn't planned, where is the actual evidence that this was an actual impulse killing committed by David, not by somebody else? Because I can agree with him that maybe there were people in the house, something went wrong, and people got hurt, people got killed, but he's not even going there. He's not going to anybody else being in this house or any, those possibilities so far in 27 minutes.
Was a gun from inside the house. It was David's gun, registered to him, not from the outside.
And hold on.
There were no signs of blood in the master.
Right, there were no signs of blood in the master bedroom. And the thing, Mr. Maines, that you forgot is that when they swabbed that gun safe, it was Kamel's DNA on that gun, not David, on the safe, not David's. So you are trying to tell everybody that David pulled that gun out of the safe because it was a spur of the moment thing. Where's his DNA? Why is his wife's DNA on it? And, if you go back and you look through, and I want to address the thing I was talking about before too. When you go back and look at the photos that they took that were part of his journal, and you see the house was always very clean. In all of their videos and in all the pictures, the house was very neat and clean, which is in stark contrast to what we see here, which, like you brought out, Greg, was this done by the people who were there? Were they looking for something? Did they stay there for a few days looking for stuff, just pulling things out? Or was that due to the police when they were going and doing their search of the house? We have no idea, but he's insinuating, again, he's implying, hoping people will infer that, oh, see, this is proof that David just kind of went wackadoodle one day.
Right.
Just one day he just snapped. He's sitting there doing his research, and now all of a sudden I'm going to get up and just start killing my family.
I mean, this is like what the cops say at the very end of their 94 pages. Well, we couldn't find any evidence that anybody else did it, so based on that, it had to have been David.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Nice. I mean, that's setting a bad precedent for any weirdos out there that want to commit a crime similar to this, I would think.
Yep.
Master bedroom.
Let me go back a little bit.
Kamel's positioning on the floor indicates there were no signs of blood in the master bedroom. Kamel's positioning on the floor indicates to me she was possibly shot without knowing she was in danger, or on her knees and fell forward. David was either standing when he was shot or he was on his knees. All three of the individuals were in comfortable clothing, sweatpants.
I found that kind of interesting that he said that they were either, David was standing or on his knees. If he's standing or on his knees, that means if he's on his knees, that doesn't make any sense because his feet are sprawled out. His arms are sprawled out. They're like this, kind of almost like this or something. And if you fall, where would he have to be to have fallen where the body was found? There's some pretty interesting issues there. But again, this is a lot of assumptions on top of assumptions, and yet he'll accuse other people of kind of doing that same thing too. But when you're being paid for a service like that, why include any of this stuff here? I mean, what is the unless he's going somewhere with it? And I've read the 27 pages, and I just didn't really see where he was going with it, only to try to pick up anything that he could find and say, here's one thing, and all of this. If you throw all these things on this wall, then that means it had to have been David, because I have nothing else to throw on the wall.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Is like when he and the Apple Valley Police Department do things like this, and they throw to see what sticks, and people who have not been researching this case will hear them and go, oh, well, okay, well, that makes sense. So you must be right. He did do it. But the moment you start even reading and looking at everything, it's like, no, how could he have been standing and ended up like this? Arms straight out, shirt pulled up as if his body is dragged. If he's kneeling, how is it that Camille falls forward, arm under her body like this? So she's going to fall forward like this, face down. And then yet, David doesn't. None of this is making sense. David's right-handed, no gunshot residue. He doesn't mention any of this. There's no GSR that they found anywhere in that house. None. Not on the bodies, not on them. I'm sorry, Greg. This is just so frustrating. I would have thought this person who would have charged $7,000 would have done more than what he did.
Or at least kind of hold back on some of the speculation, some of the guessing and things that we could, talk about and everything. But like, that's not, my understanding, that's not what he was hired for, was to jump the gun on so many different things here that, I've heard all these different stories and theories, but again, we're not about just hearing stories and stuff like that. We want to know what happened here. So if we can chop away at things, but he's not, he's adding more things to it. When here we're trying to chop away from the speculation that is ongoing. And I think Dan Hannon kind of hoped that he would do that, well, the speculation, that's cool. We can talk about that and all that stuff, but here's what we know. And that's what I think I was kind of expecting from it. And that's what I would expect from any private investigator. Tell me what you know, and based on what is proven, based on what is factual, not, oh, she may have been shot from the back and didn't know it.
Catherine, sorry.
Okay.
Did you mention the fact that the bullet hole it doesn't line up with where David's body was laying?
Yeah, not yet, but this is a good place. Thanks for doing that. If he's saying that David was standing and or kneeling, there's just no way. Kneeling does not match up because his legs are outstretched, completely out in front of him, underneath a blanket, and then also her sweater is also then on top of part of them. So the kneeling thing is out completely for David. Let's say he was standing. Again, how could he be standing and end up in this position? Do it, Ken. I beg of you. Please show us how that happened. You can't do it. But so everybody knows. Imagine now where I am. The couch, I'm now in David's living room. The couch is now in front of me, and I'm going to stand up and I'm going to shoot myself in the head. And we know the exit wound is on the left side. On the left side over here is the big picture window.
Yes.
Now, so he's like this. Somehow he decides to shoot himself in this really weird, awkward position, and it exits out this way. But keep in mind, the bullet in the ceiling that killed David, which we know didn't, is this way, that it's traveling this way, up into the ceiling and then into the rafters. The exit wound on David is this way. It is impossible. That could not, and there's no way people are like going, well, he went this way, maybe he spun around. No, I'm like, oh my God, people, think about this. Especially with this type of hollow point bullet, and the minute it hits something, it starts to lose its velocity. I mean, yes, it goes through and can go in and out, but it's not going to have enough trajectory to go in, out, up through a ceiling, hit rafters, fall or tumble all around and end up in there. And then come out clean of all things with no blood or no blood hair. But keep that in mind. David's laying this way. Exit wound is this way. The bullet is traveling. That was in the ceiling, is traveling this way. So the two do not match. And he doesn't even address that. And
well, since you brought up the momentum of the bullet, the hollow point bullet, once it's fired and supposedly goes through David's head. And then somehow magically makes it into the attic and into the rafters. Why didn't the bullets that went through Rania and Kamel make it into the basement?
Exactly.
If that theory holds any water.
Exactly. And the ones that went through Kamel, instead of being on the rug, would have been into the kitchen or into the island and maybe lodged into the dishwasher. And, so Ken Maines, along with the police department, are trying to make special circumstances for this bullet that did not kill David. And somehow it is like, it's like Paleo. It's the magical bullet. Paleo's a magical dog. So not only, yes, did the one that supposedly killed Rania and then Kamel, they just drop as soon as they come out of their heads. They're dropped straight onto the carpet, doom, 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 end up on the floor, right underneath her. But yeah, David's went zoom, zoom, flip around and up into the ceiling without leaving any trace of any skin, hair, blood, tissue, nothing.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay, let's go.
I mean, all of these are points that a seasoned investigator should have been able to pick up on. It might have taken us years to put pieces together. We have that, but this man was paid $7,000. And we even pointed out in the points that we gave to Dan to give to him, hey, what about this? He never thought past that box.
And he didn't even look at it. We gave him, like you said, we gave him instances. What about this? Here's where it's located. Can you explain it? He ignored everything and then says that we're crazy, or not crazy.
Or the phone records.
Yeah.
That was even included. What about the phone records where it says somebody made a call and they didn't make a call, or a text message and they didn't make a text message? But now that's his main points for the timeline. And half of that timeline isn't even factual because those calls and text messages never took place.
Horrible timeline.
Horrible outtake on the case.
That's important. You'll see why later.
Good.
2 bracelets on David's left wrist. What would that mean to you? Anything?
No.
Maybe nothing big, but to me it would indicate he's right-handed.
2 bracelets.
Oh, coming from the man who had to ask Dan whether he was left or right-handed.
Exactly.
So he figured out based on the bracelet. Sorry. Go ahead. And then he asked. God.
Yeah, now he's trying to make it sound like he figured it out. Oh, this is how I knew he was right-handed. Yeah,
that's a new one.
We have the emails.
That's a new one for me.
And then he asked for the source. Well, how do you know that he was right-handed?
Yeah.
With the source on the bracelet.
Yeah, and Dan's like, the multiple videos we have and the photos we have of him holding his gun like this.
It's in Eric Nelson's. Yeah, it's in Eric Nelson's film. Yeah. If he watched that and couldn't even deduce it from it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he holds his gun with his right hand wrapped around the trigger and the handle and his left hand bracing him. So, when he died, that gun should have been in his right hand. It's just common sense. But it's on the left side of his body. So
that's a curious thing, because if someone were to stage the scene with them, I would also wonder why wouldn't they move it? Why wouldn't they make sure that the gun was staged and placed on the right-hand side?
I explained this so many times. It is so normal. This is why when I first became an EMT, they drilled into our heads, your right is the patient's left. Your right is the patient's left. And even the police officers make this mistake when you see in the early reports, gun found on David's right side. See, they're thinking their right side, they're looking down, so it must be David's right side. And then they later changed it. It was on David's left. So you don't, unless you're in that field and you have it stuck in your head that your right side is their left side, you're going to go, this is my right side. It's the right side here. So it makes sense to me that they put it down on David's left side because they're facing him as they're placing and planting. They're taking it and they're not thinking, wait, my right is his left. I need to flip this. They're going right. So it makes perfect sense.
Maybe not, but for the most part, when you put on a bracelet, you are tying and doing things with your dominant hand. Now, why is that important? Well, it's very important when indicating if somebody shot himself and where the gun is landed.
Did Dave? I thought David had it on both hands. No, was it just one hand?
I think he did have them on both hands, and they found some of them at the scene, I think.
Because we have the image of that shows David's left hand. I think I'll have to go back and look at that image, but I think they were on both hands. They're not really bracelets either, but I don't know what you would call them.
Right? Well, I mean, he does say in the journal, I got a new bracelet. Does that make me G-A-Y?
So he calls them. I don't know. I don't know if I would call that, but I don't really wear bracelets, so I don't know. When I think of bracelets, I think of those big metal chain-like things, but that's somebody who has no experience with bracelets. Sorry. He doesn't have any bracelets on, right?
And they take gunshot residue powder, and it's on his left hand, or he doesn't have any. It's an indication to me that he was right-handed. May not have anything to do with anything down the line.
This may be like me saying, well, because you don't have a wedding ring on, maybe there's something wrong with you. Why even speculate? Why even go there? I don't know.
Fine, but I noticed it, so I wanted to annotate it. Now, I did note here that it's very hard to construct.
That's a big word.
The movements of the victims during their final moments, because there was a dog in the house, and he was a very active dog. And,
that's a huge dog. That dog is just,
oh my gosh,
Doberman size.
As gross as it is, he started feasting on the bodies because they had been there, and the dog's instinct is to survive. So therefore, he was no doubt pulling on the bodies. And he is not a super huge dog, but he's not a toy dog either. And he had a lot of energy because of the home videos that I saw. So he definitely could have moved some of the bodies. And I know that.
No, he couldn't. A body dead weight. David's body at a dead weight would probably be close to 200 pounds. You mean that little 20-pound dog is going to be dragging around 200 pounds all over the living room? Kamel was probably close to 150, 170. Maybe Rania? Maybe the dog could have drug her around. Has this man even lifted dead weight? Dead weight's freaking heavy.
Doesn't look like that.
And he forgets, too, that there was dog food in the house. Yeah, the dog was starving and he didn't have any food available. There were 2 bags there. Let's forget that part.
Well, if the dog is starving and in flight mode, I mean, wouldn't that also mean that the dog wasn't as active because it wasn't being fed?
Yeah, they would slow down.
Properly fed.
Yeah, but he's trying to say so the dog was feasting and sustaining himself on those bodies. So he's only going to choose a face that's on the floor face down. He's going to get there. He's going to choose a hand that's underneath the body. Yeah, he's going to get there. And another hand that's over a head underneath the blanket. Yeah, he's going to go there. And I mean, it's ludicrous. He just didn't do any research. But yet, again, they're blaming the dog.
Yeah, I think Mary makes a good point here that makes me wonder if it wasn't David, if somebody was placing the gun here, could they have been dyslexic?
No, I'm telling you, this is what I'm saying. It's what you automatically do. When you see somebody who's facing you, your brain automatically just goes, okay, my right, that's their right, when it's actually their left. It's just what every human does. And that's why they were constantly stressing with us, your right is the patient's left. Because if you're writing a report and you're writing that I started the IV in the patient's left anacubical, and then you're like going, oh, wait a second, you're looking for an IV on the left arm and the IV's on the right arm. It's like, that's a problem. So that's why you have to constantly drill. But this just tells me that the person who placed that gun was not someone who, had that kind of training in their head. They just acted like any other normal human would have and just took that gun and placed it because they're right-handed. They put it down on the right-hand side.
Interesting.
Or left, David's left, they're right.
They're right. So they were maybe in a rush.
They don't even have to be in a rush. You can just be doing it. You're just walking around. Like, I'm going to stage this. I'm going to go put the gun down now. My right hand, I'm putting it down here on the floor, on the right side of the floor for me. They didn't stop to think. I would sit there and go, okay, there's a person on the floor. I need to make sure I'm going to put it on their right side. Most people would go, okay, I'm just going to put this down. They're right-handed. I'm putting it down on the floor, right underneath where my right hand is. And so for them, it's on the right-hand side. It's just how the brain works.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of with Mary on this, and maybe I don't want to speak for Mary, but this is another reason why, I didn't spend too much time thinking that David was killed by the government, or David was killed by people that knew exactly what they were doing. Because I think pros, if these were professional killers, they would have known. They would have put the gun by the right hand side. That's just my view. Maybe that's
professional. Yes.
Yeah. Right hand person.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a big one. Field of vision. Seinfeld fans may get that. Okay.
That is more than likely. Autopsy. David's gunshot wound had an exit through his left parietal bone. This would indicate he was shot in the right side of the head.
Not necessarily.
That's important. Remember about the bracelets on the left hand would indicate that
it's all about the bracelets there. It's all about them bracelets.
He's such a crack investigator.
Gunshot wound had an exit through his left parietal bone.
Confidential.
Even
Sorry, go ahead.
What he's saying is not true. You have no idea where the entrance wound is. It could have been toward the top of the head. It could have been toward the back of the head. It could have been on the exact opposite side. We don't know. Even the MEs stated they could not give a trajectory path because they did not have the entrance wound on the skull. This guy, again, but if you don't know that, you're going to accept what he says.
This would indicate he was shot in the right side of the head. Okay. Now that's important. Remember about the bracelets on the left hand would indicate that he was right-handed. That would indicate he's shot on the right side of the head.
Well, you said the bracelets on the left hand would indicate that he's right-handed?
He's trying to piece together to say, see, David did shoot himself. The bracelets were on his left. He was right-handed. The entrance wound was on the right side. So see, he was right-handed, right side entrance wound. He did it. That's where he's going.
Okay.
But it wasn't on the right side.
Yeah, we don't know. It's indeterminate, dork face.
The wife had 2 head wounds, and entrances are located on the left side. Obviously, this means she was shot in the left side of her head.
No.
The daughter had 1 gunshot wound entrance to the right side of her head. However, I note here at the autopsy, what is most complexing to me is she suffered a fractured rib. And I was never able to come up with an explanation for that.
Because
you weren't able to come up with an explanation for anything.
Nope.
You were never able to come up with any explanation that would show why David Crowley did this. You came up with one explanation that shows why you're full of shit. Aside from that, I don't see any other explanation that you've come up with.
Yeah.
Next page, I have the lab results. There were 6 shots fired, 6 bullets, and 6 casings were recovered. Hey, that's a forensic pot of gold.
But not at the same time.
Oh,
not
this hurts
at the
my
same
head.
time. That is one thing he's not really focused on. They did not leave the house with 6 casings and 6 bullets.
Nope.
Cover all the bullets and all the casings.
The
lab determined that all were fired from a .40 caliber Springfield XD handgun.
But how? How did they determine that? They only were able to determine that 57, the bullet that they found 1 month later, they connected that to the gun through item 31, which was a fragment. They did not directly connect item 57 to that gun.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And he's failing to mention, for all of those out there who may be a Ken Mains fan, is that in the ballistic reports, it states that the test bullets fired from David's gun were of poor reproducibility. They fired 4 shots and could not get 4 consistent lands and grooves to show up on these bullets. So because they could not match item 57 with item number 1 and the test fire bullets, they then compared it to a very tiny small fragment, 1 pellet worth of item number 31, because that's all item number 31 was 1 pellet from the expanded bullet, which they never found that one. They only found a fragment. So he's calling that a bullet. Where's the rest of that bullet? Never found. So they take that and they compare that to item 57 instead of the test fired bullets. What does that tell you about how accurate this testing really was? Are you going to really believe that all of these bullets came from David's gun? I wouldn't.
I just would like to bring up that Camille has bracelets on her right hand and a watch on her left hand. So as I'm looking through the journal pages, she consistently has both her wrists have stuff on it. I'm still looking for a photo for David, but
it's so interesting how he could try to be articulate on certain things and not articulate on other things. He can try to be very articulate on how these bracelets help him figure out these things, but with the DNA, with all of these other things, he's not articulate. He's speculating, and he's not even getting these things right. Nobody cares about a freaking bracelet. Mm-hmm. I mean, just look at what those lab results show. Look at what Catherine just said. They couldn't even find this stuff, and he was given this. Dan Hannon gave Kenneth Mains all of this data. It's a lot of data to go through, and so it's very interesting what Kenneth Mains kind of tries to focus on, and the things that he just glosses over as if it's
the important stuff that he didn't even research.
I mean, 6 and 6, that is not true. That is one of the biggest blunders. It's there's many blunders that these cops made of having to go back to the house 2 times. Does he mention that? But he just makes it sound like, and this is what the cops did too. They made it seem like, we found 6 bullets and 6 bullet casings. So it's good. It's all good. No, that's not true. That is absolutely not true. They did not find all. Now, it is true that they found them, sure, but not at the same time.
Well, yeah, and they left feeling very confident because when they left, they had 3 bullets, 1 fragment, and 6 casings, and 1 unspent cartridge. So, I'm assuming here, but it makes sense that they're like going, okay, we got 3 bullets, 3 bodies. It's a done deal. When the lab got done testing it, those 3 bullets they walked out with all belonged to Kamel. All
Right.
had her blood, hair, and or tissue on those bullets. Not David's, not Ranya's.
Well, there was the fourth bullet in the basement too.
Well, okay, the one in the south basement wall that
But that had nobody's DNA,
yeah, it was
nothing
shot through the floor and then into the wall. Correct.
Shouldn't the one in the basement at least have David's DNA on it if he loaded it and put it in there?
It would make sense. But that one did go through, the rug, the hardwood floor, through the ceiling, and then into the wall. So it probably had a little more friction to wipe off anything with the heat and everything, maybe got rid of whatever DNA was left on there. But the one up in the ceiling really only went through a little bit of sheetrock and then hit a truss and then fell down.
Right.
So that's the only thing. And that's another thing too. When you look at that hole in the ceiling, you see dark areas like black spots and like soot, basically, where it's hitting that ceiling, which is what you would expect of if you're just take a gun and you just fire it, without it going through anything. You would expect to see that because there's going to be soot and all that stuff on that bullet. It hits the ceiling, it pulls it off, it drags it, leaves it. But if it had gone through somebody's head, blood, brain, hair, bone, whatever, the moment it's not going to, but if miraculously it makes it up, does a complete 360 and then does a 90-degree angle straight up into the ceiling, the moment it hits that ceiling, it's going to be leaving blood, hair, tissue in that opening spot. And there's nothing there.
Right. I agree. Okay. Back to our buddy.
That was lying next to David. So all the bullets came from that one weapon. Doesn't mean David did it, right? No, we're not there if we get there. But they all came from that weapon, and it was left there. Talks about mixture of DNA, so on and so forth. You can read more of the lab results at the end of
so on and so forth. That's just there's something about DNA, but so on and so forth. Screw it. You know why? Because he probably didn't want to take the time to say, okay, this is item 1. Okay, what is item 1? Okay, this is item 1A, 1B, item 1B, C, 3, 2, whatever. He probably didn't want to take that time to actually look at that. But if he would have, and maybe, sometimes I wonder that there's a reason why some of these people don't want to look at certain things, so that they can honestly believe and honestly tell you that this is what I think. Well, have you looked? No, I haven't looked at that. No, I'm not going to look at that because this is what I think, and it's done. It really makes me wonder about some people and their views on this case. They purposely do not want to look at things because it may change their view. It may hurt them.
May hurt their feelings.
It may hurt their feelings, may hurt their pride, but it's like, man, in a case like this, you gotta throw all that stuff out. It's not about being right. It's just about finding truth.
And the thing that didn't even catch his eye, people, you need to go and look at this blood analysis. Item number 1 was the gun. Item number 1A, I believe, was the trigger. So the only blood that on that trigger, let's see, then there was another area from the gun, which is item 1B, 1A-3. It comes back as a mixture of 2 or more individuals, matched David, but Kamel is excluded. Item number 1B, I think, which was either the handle or the barrel, who is included David, does not match Kamel or Rania, but they can't be excluded. Now, keep in mind, Kamel was shot 3 times. We have 3 bullets with her blood and tissue and hair on it. 3. And yet her blood is not on that weapon. Her blood is all over the house, but her blood is not on that weapon. Does that make sense to you? It shouldn't at all.
Yeah, such and such. There's DNA. There's other people's DNA.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to look at that. Doesn't want to go there. I don't know.
They did DNA on the bullets. Mm-hmm. The bullets passing through an individual is obviously going to have their DNA found on it. And I talk about each bullet and each DNA found.
Oh my God.
Does he? I don't remember. I'll have to go back and reread that. See if he's talked about. Does he talk about the DNA that they couldn't match to either three of those people? Yeah. I don't believe so.
He probably glossed over that.
That's in the such and such category.
And he's also completely glossed, well, at least so far, the fact that that no blood was detected on item number 57, the bullet from the ceiling, and that there was only a little bit of blood detected on item number 43, I think 45, which was the one that was for Rania. Let me look this up real quick.
53.
Okay, 53. Thank you. Yeah, item number 53 only had a little bit of blood that they were able to swab. But keep in mind that was found after they were rolling the carpet. So this could have also been another one that didn't actually go through a body, but it picks up her spot because it's rolling through the DNA on the rug, because it was just a very small, minute amount that was found when they swabbed it. So we don't have the bullet that killed Rania. We don't have the bullet that killed David. Now, I want Sophia, if you can, since it looks like Greg needs to take a break, explain to people about the loci and how and why that's important and what they found on item 57.
The loci and the STR-PCR testing, basically what that is the DNA is so minute that they had to replicate it hundreds of thousands of times to get a DNA profile. And so with a hollow point bullet, you shouldn't have to do that, because it's going to grab skin, hair, blood, tissue. It's going to grab all of that. And so why did they have to do that type of a test with the minute amount of DNA that they received off of item 57? It's because it's not the bullet that killed David.
Yeah, and the bullets that that you can clearly see when you look at the photos that did go through Kamel's head, they're discolored. They almost looked oxidized, that type of thing. The other bullets that did not go through a human body are shiny. They look just like they were just shot, hit something, and they mushroomed, and that was it. And that's really important to remember too. There's no discoloration to item 57 at all. No discoloration to maybe, I think, to 45 either, or 53, excuse me, 53 had, yeah, it looked completely normal, like you would just, shot something. None of these things even tweaked his interest or caught his attention. He just like, okay, just like the police did. We have 5 bullets, 1 teeny tiny fragment, which was a pellet off of the expanded end. And we have 6 casings. We're good to go. We got it all.
And I did send you a photo. I need help understanding if it's his right or left hand.
Oh, okay.
Because
that's his right arm.
That's his right arm?
Yes, that's his right arm.
So he has his watch on his right arm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, there's Maine's theory right out the window.
Yep.
Hate to hurt those fragile feelings, but
yep, that's definitely, I mean, his David's so-called bracelets would be on his left, but his watch is on his right. And that's what I do. I'm right-handed, and I always wear my watch on my right and any bracelets on my left. But sometimes I get a burr up my butt and we'll wear it on the other hand. But again, you're trying to follow his logic, and in his own brain, this makes sense, but it's not a standard, I think. I don't know. Maybe that was what he was taught. Who knows?
Greg, I sent you that photo, by the way. Just check your email.
Okay. Let me look at
and you can put it up if you want for the audience to see.
To the gray stage one, or The other one?
To the gray stage and to the red foot on this.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I don't have any. Okay, I see it on the gray stage one. Oh, yeah. Well, that's a very popular photo there.
And it's right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's wearing his watch on his right hand. Right wrist, I mean.
Okay.
Debunked again.
Take my face off the screen.
Sorry, I'm trying to get to mains here.
This is the manner of death. There's 4 possible manners of death, and we must deduce until we come to one.
Oh, this is the fun part here. Okay, I remember this part vividly.
Natural death, hey, you can rule that out. Accidental, hey, we can rule that out. Murder-suicide, okay, I have a reason to believe that it could possibly be murder-suicide. What are my reasonings? No forced entry.
Because the cops told you?
Whoa. No forced entry. How many times have we heard this one? Stop me if you've heard this one. No forced entry.
Stop.
When you don't need forced entry. It's not even a question. Who cares about forced entry?
Yeah, especially if it's the people that are implicated, because they could have easily been let in the house. And the back door's open.
That would be the back door. You could argue that would be a sign of forced entry.
You don't need forced entry if the door's open.
It's open.
Walk right in.
Walk right in, but they don't walk out either. That's the other thing too. To not leave the rear slider closed, to not leave the rear, and to walk out the front door is another thing that is very, very strange. Almost whoever did this did not want to be seen walking out that front door. And why not?
Well, you're not going to shut the door so you can keep going in and out.
Right. But to exit out of the rear slider, knowing you have to leave it open, right? You cannot unlock it from that side, or to not go out the garage door either is also interesting too.
They're avoiding the neighbors. It's like, hello.
You can't blame them for that, but
right?
I mean, but still, it's like, I really, it's like forced entry. That's why when some of these people say forced entry, like you lose a lot of credit, a lot of credibility, a lot of respect, a lot of the open. I'm trying to keep an open mind here to this stuff, and it's just like some of the same bullet points that we've been hearing over and over again. Forced entry, no, but what about the fact that you don't need forced entry, like you said, because there was something open?
I mean, and that's the thing. That's, I have studied so many criminal cases and serial killers and stuff. And a lot of them, there is no forced entry. They'll knock on the door. Somebody will open it. They then force their way in. You don't see the forced entry. Or they come in, like in the case of like Ted Bundy, who always faked things and help me here and help me there. And, help me get this in the car. I can't walk. And, and so people get suckered in, and then they're taken when it's an opportune moment. But you don't see any signs of struggle. But yet this is all this dude focuses on. Well, there's, the doors aren't kicked in and the windows aren't broken and things aren't thrown all over. So it's not forced. Really? Okay.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Look at this. Look what Iconic wrote.
2 feet is the maximum ejection for a 40 cal. So the shell casing should be to the right portion of the room. So the bullet casing supposedly should be to David's rear left. Rear left.
So it would have been behind him. And that's what I'm saying. Because when you watch him shoot his gun and you're watching, it's being ejected this way. Mm-hmm. Yes, they can once in a while go, at least it's been in my experience, it can go a different direction, but they're generally the same direction. But this makes so much sense because Sophia and I, we sit there and we're like, where would this person have to have stood to get that bullet into the ceiling? Now we know there's a casing close to the window, underneath the window. That makes sense because if you're standing there holding, and you're shooting this way, it would eject toward the window. That makes sense. Not David going this way and okay, I'm going to pull it, it would eject toward the couch and land maybe behind the sofa. But that's not where they found anything. Thank you, Iconic. That helps a lot.
Here's another.
Yeah, it absolutely does.
He doesn't explain the missing blood spatter. Nobody explains David's blood missing from the scene, Rania's blood missing from the scene.
They just don't talk about it. Just like many other things. You know, like when you mention 6 casings and 6 bullets, you know, but you don't make sure to mention they weren't all found at the same time. But then you want to focus on bracelets. I don't know. There's something really wrong about that.
Sophia, she's being silly.
What's she doing now? Oh,
I sent her. I sent her the meme.
And that was something I specifically asked, Greg to ask him about, was the blood spatter. Why is there no high velocity blood spatter when we have 4 gunshot wounds to 3 heads and 0 high velocity blood spatter? Why?
And can you explain just briefly, and then we'll continue on what that is? What is high velocity blood spatter?
Okay, there are different types of blood spatter. Being passive, which is just like drops. It's just like gravity, quote unquote gravity. It just drops from whatever it's on. It just hits the floor, 90-degree angle. Then you have low velocity. Say if I was kind of swinging my arm or whatever, that's going to be low velocity. Then you have medium velocity, which is where you have something and you're swinging it. It hits the blood and leaves a pattern. It, an instrument hits something, which is usually blunt force trauma. Bats, car accidents, anything that's, causes a blunt impact, and then it leaves a certain pattern that you see all over the house. Then there's high velocity, which is from like a bullet. When it hits and it enters, it leaves a sprain. It leaves us fine mist with also larger droplets of blood, but you will see a fine mist pattern. And it would be like wherever it is coming out, you will see a back blow, a mist coming out from where it enters, and then you will see where it comes out from this side quite a bit. It'll mist and take things with it like brain matter, but there's a distinctive pattern. Mm-hmm. Now you should see 4 areas of fine mist and then some with the back blow, but you don't see, it's nowhere in that house. The only thing you see is medium velocity within that living room. That's it.
Yeah, and here's another good one.
High velocity would be less, it would measure less than
it's tiny.
2 millimeters or 0.2 centimeters.
Yeah, the droplets are very, very tiny. It's mist. Think of misting. Put Kool-Aid in your mouth and then blow it out really fast. Mm-hmm. That mist that you get, that would be a similar pattern. But now take some ketchup and whack it with, a rolling pin, and that pattern that it's going to produce is going to be medium velocity. There's a total difference in how it appears.
Wow.
Yeah. And what you see at the crime scene is either passive
or medium,
aka low velocity, or medium velocity. There's no high velocity whatsoever there.
Yeah, and there's also a transfer pattern on the wall next by the bedroom, and then the soaking stain on the recliner, like Infidel is just pointing out. Then we also have a soaking stain. So something was bleeding profusely at the bottom, at the foot of that recliner, but yet it's not on that rug. Does that make sense to anybody? What does that tell you? That should have told him as an investigator that there had to have been something underneath that. I would call that like there's, to catch whatever. Say you would lay it down a tarp or plastic or something, so it's not going to get on the rug. But yet there's something that's bleeding profusely leaning up against that spot of the recliner. And if it's bleeding that much to leave a spot this big, it should have dripped onto the floor, but there's nothing there. There are no pools of blood anywhere in the house. And again, 4 gunshot wounds to 3 heads. There should be some kind of pooling somewhere, and you would definitely find high velocity blood spatter, and all of it is missing from the scene.
Well, even if Kamel had died right there on that living room carpet, you would have seen pools of blood right there where her head was located by the couch. And there's none.
Just by the sheer force of that bullet going through the head and pulling out, you would have found stuff, and there was nothing there.
And her laying there all that time too, but you don't see it. Mm-mm. And yeah, infidel, their bodies were moved.
Yeah, and when you see David's, and the one photo that we got from Tony Floyd, that showed David's back. Now, he was lying on his back, keep in mind. Now, if he truly shot himself and he's killed himself and he's lying on his back, that line of lividity, you would see the lividity marks all over his back. Anywhere where his skin touched the ground, the pooling of blood would have settled there. And it would be all red, a deep red. And his back is white as can be. His body was moved who knows how many times. That lividity could not settle in.
Okay.
They know this. This is like medical 101. This is kindergarten, medical stuff. They teach that in basic EMT. I mean, first aid. Before even EMT school, you're taught that. So this is not, uncommon knowledge, or maybe they didn't know, or they didn't think. No, they knew. But yet, nothing. It doesn't even ring a bell. It doesn't set off any alarms for these people.
Wonder why.
Okay, let's continue.
In the snow. David's gun was used, and all
no
6
human
cartridges.
No human footprints in the snow. We don't really know that.
No.
And we do know that they did find some animal prints. There were some animal tracks in that snow too. But because the reason why there were human footprints in the snow, the problem is we don't know if those were from the cops, from the neighbors that were circling around that house, or if they were from somebody else. So there are some interesting things about footprints in the snow that I've looked into that can't really be verified yet. But the main thing is, how are you going to say there are no human footprints in the snow? That is, the crime scene photos showed that there are.
Yes.
The only question is, whose footprints are they?
Yeah, and when you read the reports, if I remember correctly, the backyard, they said that there were a few animal tracks, but on the deck, there was a lot of packed down snow as if it was walked on. But I don't know if they were able to either look or photograph for prints. And that was before they got there, before they started trampling down all the snow.
Right. So even though it's December, they're making it seem like, well, David just decided to leave that back door open.
Yeah.
And then just walk around without any shoes on or any socks or anything like that. It's just there's just no logical reasoning for a lot of the things that are found at the crime scene. And then you have people like Kenneth Maines who are trying to explain this and not doing a very good job at it. Maybe to people who don't want to look into the case, who just want to think David is crazy because they hate David, because they're glad that David is dead. For those people, they're probably, they probably love Kenneth Maines. They would be a Kenneth Maines cuck at this point.
And this next one, I'm going to say it now, so you don't have to stop
Sure.
it in 2 seconds. But where he says, note on computer was indicative of a suicide note. In addition, blood was found on the letter key A, which coincides with the note. Oh my God. It's so stupid. Because how does that mean anything? Because when you look at the other keys, Mr. Maines, that coincide with that note that was written, what was it? I have loved you all with all my heart.
Yeah.
not every single one of those keys. In fact, I think A is really one of the only keys that has blood. Now, if you have bloody fingers and you're typing out, I have loved you all with all my heart, there's going to be blood on all of those keys, not one, not just on only one, the A key. It's going to be on several, if not all. And it's not.
Let's go back to the bloody footprints because number one, they're measured in centimeters and millimeters. So when you actually measure the digits and the width of that footprint, if you get an estimate of David's foot, those prints are too small. You also have to take into consideration that if he had blood on his feet, the minute he put pressure down on the floor, that blood would have squished out. And so those prints are measuring bigger than the person's foot would have been.
In
and I know this
would have measured bigger, correct? Because you did
correct.
This. And so,
correct.
But that's not how it turned out. This is so important what she's saying. What she's telling everybody right now is vitally important, that those prints, no way, shape, or form, besides the simple fact that I will beat this until I'm freaking dead, you can't have a big toe separate from the rest of the foot and make a print. Doesn't happen. But please, people, listen to her. This is important.
Yeah, I tried to recreate those prints. I tried my feet, and I tried my feet with socks on, stepping in paint. And when I would go back and I would measure the prints, my footprints in the paint, which also blood would do this because it's being squished out with the pressure from the body, we're measuring between 1 centimeter to 2 centimeters more than each of my digits and the width of my foot. And I tried and tried to recreate those prints, and I could not recreate them.
With your foot, you tried to recreate.
Yeah, I tried with my foot, and I couldn't. I tried with my hand, and I had a hard time. I couldn't do it. So I don't know what made those prints. But what I do know is that a male hand and a male foot would have been too big for those prints. So,
and again, once it's sprayed with the amino black, that is where it pulls out and it adheres to the blood and the hemoglobin and then the body tissues that's left behind on that floor. And that is when you see the pattern, the true pattern of those prints. The big toe, you see a swipe all the way down. It doesn't even match it. It's like, say the top of the big toe is in line with where the so-called ball of the foot is. Your feet aren't like this. You don't have a separate entity away from the main portion of your foot. You see, again, swipe marks where maybe they did something. Oops, I made a mess. So let me clean this up. Now let's start all over again, is what it appears. And you don't find that with true, real bloody footprints. And plus, like Sophia was just saying, the measurements are completely off. And then Ken Maines was making fun of the point that, somebody was asking, and I'm sure it was probably Sophia and I, because we've asked this question so many times, why didn't they check his feet? If you think he did this, you would check the feet for blood, swab it to make sure you know what you're doing. But yet the coroner's report says his feet are neat and tidy and well kept. There's no mention of blood on his feet. If there was enough blood on his foot to leave that print, like Sophia pointed out before, it would have been between the toes, on the toenails. It would have been visible. But there's nothing found on his feet, nothing mentioned.
Yep, and if they could prove it, they would have actually mentioned that.
Yes,
that's why they bring up some things here where they talk about prints. We know that there are prints on that floor, but they never are able to say whose prints they are. I don't even think they may. No. Did they mention the DNA? I don't even know if they mentioned the DNA of those prints on that. But they do not say we can prove whose footprints those
But
are.
here's the beauty of their final report. It worked out beautifully. They're not saying anything. They're not pointing out a motive. They're not pointing out any evidence. They're going to list a few things that were found and then leave it for everybody else to fill in the blanks, which is what everybody's been doing. Oh, those prints on the floor. David must have done that. Oh, item number 53. Oh, it had some of his DNA. That's the one that killed him. People are filling this in. They never say this in their reports. It's the public that has said it. And they know this, and they're letting it go because now they don't have to prove anything. People are proving it to themselves based on nothing.
Right. And it's interesting who they go after for saying things about those prints and, you know, who they don't. That's pretty interesting. All right. So no, he says David gun was used in all 6. Okay, let's keep going here. I'll let this guy talk.
Came from that same gun.
Came from the same gun.
A bloody barefooted footprint was left on the floor in the home.
I've been getting paid $1,000 a month.
Ad number 2.
Well, that's everybody remember there were no prints leading up to
David
or
was
away
found
from.
deceased.
Ken Maines just got paid for that ad we saw, by the way.
That's disgusting.
Just letting you know. I've been getting paid. Well, he's getting paid here too.
But again, you know, keep in mind there are no prints leading up to those markings on the floor or away from. There are just a couple of things stuck, stabbed right in the middle. There are no pools of blood to be stepped in. How did they get there? He never even tries to figure it out.
No, and he doesn't. He's very crafty, kind of very sneaky, because he doesn't necessarily tie those prints to David, right? He's
insinuating. He's implying.
He's insinuating. Right. He's insinuating. He's very crafty. He's a sneaky little guy.
David's gun was used, and all 6 spent cartridges came from that same gun. A bloody barefooted footprint was left on the floor in the home. David was found deceased and barefooted.
We don't know if they all came from the same gun, and he should make it clear. He should say things like, you know, according to this report on this page, blah blah blah. But
a note on the computer was indicative of a suicide note.
It was not.
In addition, blood was found on the letter.
No, the note on the computer was not a suicide note. There were no suicide notes left in that house. He's completely wrong there. Completely wrong. That was not a suicide note.
And there's no proof he wrote that.
And there's no proof he wrote that. Thank you.
I can't wait for him to get to submit to Allah.
Yes, I mean, there was a note there. We could say, okay, this is what was left on the computer. It is not indicative of a suicide note. Now, again, he's giving his view on it. So if that's what he thinks, fine. But even the police don't say that.
Right.
There were no suicide notes in that house. According to police, according to any official documents, no suicide. No suicide note. That's a big, big deal because there are people out there who do commit suicide, who do leave suicide notes. And he's lumping David in with all of them. Now, I hope he's not doing it for personal reasons. He is not hired to bring in his personal views, his personal topics into this here. To say that it is indicative of a suicide note is completely inaccurate. You could say, I think it is, but it's not. It's not indicative of it. That is completely wrong.
Yeah, it's total supposition written as fact.
That's ridiculous. Because that's what we were told when this first happened, that there were 2 suicide notes. And then we come to find out those 2 notes are not suicide notes. At all. At all. And that's a huge deal because, you know, it's ridiculous.
I feel bad for his viewers who are actually buying this bullshit right now.
Well, they may, you know, they're being tricked. They may not even know.
That's why I feel bad for them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he may not even know. He's not very, very sharp either here. So he's not very sharp to even make this video, by the way.
Yeah.
The thing is I think he knows exactly what he's doing. So at this point, that he already had a bias against this case.
That's
and now
what
he's just picking out facts to sell to his audience.
Yeah, it does. It seems like he did have a bias here. And all right.
PA, which coincides with the note. The gate to the house.
Because all it did is write A. Because I have loved you all with all of my heart. But there's only blood on the A key. There's blood on multiple keys there too. If you look at those photos.
Yeah, but not that go
there.
along with that so-called note.
It's just hard. I mean, looking at the keyboard, why you would kind of the A coincide. Well, I'm sure there's other keys that coincide with it too. There's other keys that may not coincide with it either. When the police, when the investigators, when the BCA got a hold of this computer and were able to do DNA tests on it, were able to do latent prints on it, what did they find? What did they find? That's what should be here. If they found something that tied to a murder-suicide, okay, cool. I could see that. But there's nothing there that ties to a murder-suicide when you're talking about this computer and you're talking about the DNA that was found on the laptop in the kitchen, and you're talking about any of the clear prints. There was like a palm print, a huge palm print. There's a couple prints that you can clearly see in those photos that was found on this computer in the kitchen, and they cannot tie it to David Crowley. That should be his focus. This should not even be in this area of a murder-suicide. This should be in the area of a murder, because this shows they cannot tie this to David. So therefore, this cannot be tied to a murder-suicide. This would be more tied to a murder. That's my view. Go ahead.
I would also like to point out that the A goes along with the day one journal, and that was the very last thing besides the computer being accessed after David's death, just a couple days before the bodies were found. But the day one journal was the last thing to be accessed, go through, and have posts deleted from. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe they were trying to get into the day one journal to delete the posts that we see being deleted. Just a thought.
It's a very strong possibility. It's so frustrating because it is clear this man didn't really compare anything. He read a report and said, oh, okay, well, what they're saying, I'm going to put this in line and fill in the dots on, spots on my little report, plug in my template, and now see, it all makes sense. Well, no, it doesn't make sense when you look at the evidence. It doesn't all match his gun. When you're reading the ballistics, how many times do I have to tell you this, Ken? It's in their own handwriting. It's poor reproducibility. When you have to go to the lengths of comparing a fired bullet to a fragment instead of the test bullets coming from the gun and then saying, oh, well, okay, that matches this one. And since we matched this one with the gun, so this one must be coming from the gun. How is that, instead of taking your test fire bullets and let's compare 57 with the test fire? Do they match? They must not have matched. That's why they're going to item 31. It's so unprofessional. Everything's so unprofessional.
And item 31 was never DNA tested.
Mm-mm.
I mean,
it was just a petal from one of the bullets.
And I mean, if we were to try to figure out where item 31 came from, it's not with item 57, because item 57 is the one that weighs the most.
Yeah.
And so it obviously is not from item 57. So why they even compared it to item 57 doesn't even make sense. Yeah. But It's just.
And isn't I think that the spreadsheet I did listing all of the weights of these bullets, what they should have weighed, because they're like, what, 184 grain or something like that. I can't remember. It's 180 grain, I think. And then compared to what they were when they were weighed in the lab, and then how much it lost. And it's really funny because, item 57 is the only one that didn't lose any grains at all. And so, yeah. And 31, no, I don't think it could have even come from 53. I don't think the weights matched up. But so that means that there's another bullet missing. They have all the other bullets are complete with the exception of that fragment. And then there is a petal missing from item 53. But the 31 and 53 don't match up. It would be way, way, way too heavy. But instead of going, okay, now we have a bullet that this petal goes to, it's not here, where is it? They're just like happy campers. Oh, look, everything matches up. No, it doesn't.
Yeah. And again, it wasn't DNA tested. So
right. And not DNA tested. Yeah, I recreated the prints too with my right hand as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh boy. All right. Let's keep rolling.
The house was closed on the fence outside.
That's not true. That's not true either. If you look at those photos, if you look at the crime scene photos, I don't see a gate. I don't see a gate. I don't see a gate on either side. So what gate are they? And the cops also mentioned this. This is one of the things that I haven't really talked about much because it's like I haven't gone there, so I don't know. But if you look at the crime scene photos, tell me if you see a gate on either side of David Crowley's house back then in those crime scene photos. I haven't found it. I don't see a gate. What gate are they talking about here? Had a really hard time with that one. But there's a gate and it's closed, so that's all.
Of the bodies not being on furniture or bed as if it was a planned event. Think back to the case I did not too long ago of Robert Fisher when he killed his entire family and then escaped. They were all in bed.
Has anybody heard of that case? I don't know who Robert Fisher is, but if anybody does, or if you know later, please make sure to leave a comment or something. I'd love to hear more about that. I've seen some of his work on the Zodiac case, and so I'm curious.
And the position, but the positioning of the bodies, he doesn't even expand on that. The position of the body should be telling him that this was not a murder-suicide.
There you go.
Well, there was another murder. Another one. What was that? I think it was in Pennsylvania where the man went on the run. He killed his whole family, the kids, the wife, the mother, and the kids. They were all found in like sleeping bags and stuff, which was planned, but they weren't found in beds or on furniture and stuff. But I mean, anyway, trying to remember which that one was. I can't off
Robert
the top
Fisher,
of my head.
I don't know. I don't know what relevance that really has, but that's kind of par for the course with this guy.
A wanted fugitive allegedly killed his family and blowing up the house in which they lived in Scottsdale, Arizona.
All right. Well, he solved that one, so obviously he's done a bang-up case on this one.
It was a plan.
He didn't solve it. Go ahead.
The dog was still alive.
I mean, was he an investigator?
Was he
hired for it?
No, it was a documentary on Netflix.
So what's he talking about here when he talks about that case?
I don't know.
A note on the computer was indicative of a suicide note. In addition, blood was found on the letter key A, which coincides with the note. The gate to the house was closed on the fence outside. The positioning of the bodies not being on furniture or bed as if it was a planned event.
So if the bodies were on furniture or a bed, like in this latest Idaho murder, that would show that it's a plan. From his view, he would think that it was something that was planned. It's hard to follow his logic. Maybe it's just me. I don't know.
No, he's very poor, not only with grammar and spelling, but he doesn't even read it correctly. So it's hard to follow. But I think that is what he's saying, what you just said.
So because they're all on the floor.
It wasn't planned. It was a spur of the moment thing. He snapped.
He snapped, right. Okay.
Back to the case I did not too long ago of Robert Fisher, when he killed his entire family and then escaped. They were all in bed. That was a planned event.
That was a planned event because they were all in bed. Okay. So
the dog was still...
I haven't heard his views on the whole Idaho murder case, but apparently based on that, he would think that the 4 teens, the college students that were killed, that was a planned event, right? Based on what he's saying here.
Alive and not confined. Remember, Robert Fisher took his dog with.
And there's another case, Philip Marshall, a very similar case where he was accused of killing himself, killing his 2 children, and killing the family dog, which turned out not to even be his dog. But the dog was also killed in that case too, which is there's some similar things with the David Crowley case, but it is very interesting why in this case the dog was not killed. And I could give you a few reasons, and I'm sure we could all speculate on it, but I'm curious. Let's see what he says.
The dog was still alive, not confined in his kennel, which he had there. If an intruder was present, the dog most likely would have been shot or confined to another.
Well, that goes back.
It would depend on who.
That goes back to this most recent case, which he has hashtagged in his video, in this video here.
Right. He didn't kill that dog.
There's no dog killed there either. But the dog was barking, and people heard that dog in this most recent Idaho murder case.
And there's evidence of Paleo being in the basement. How does he, oh my God, anybody could have put Paleo downstairs and shut the door, did what they needed to do, and then let him out later.
And if they knew that dog,
yeah,
sure, we could speculate. Sure.
Clearly probably loved the dog. And then, they go up and down the stairs or there are so many things, but his saying that was indicative of a suicide because the dog was left alive and not kenneled is ridiculous.
Yeah, okay, let's keep going.
The room in order to allow the offender to do his dastardly deed.
So the offender couldn't lure the dog down into the basement, do the dastardly deed, and then
there's feces downstairs, dude. Right. Easy to put the dog downstairs.
And it's like it just seems like he's okay with speculating, but then he tries to discount. He goes out of his way in some cases to try to discount other people speculating things that may prove what he's saying is not accurate. So it's interesting.
I have no respect for this man. So
there are several reasons that make me believe this could have been a murder carried out by someone outside of the home. See how I try to look at
see now here we go here and look at that list. It's like 2 or 3 things. But that's what he tried. Hey, I'm still open to it, guys. I'm still open to it here. It's still there. And I mean, he is really patting himself on the back here. Patting himself on the back at 33 minutes and 33 seconds. He's making sure, hey, I look at everything. No, you don't.
We'll make a list of things of why it could be a murder-suicide from inside the home. Let's look at the outside of the home and see if anything makes sense. The rear patio door was slightly open when police arrived on the scene. Okay. The gun laying near David's left side even though he was reported to be right-handed, and the entrance wound to the right side of his head. And all the victims being found in one room as if they were gathered and herded into that one room. It's reasons it could be a murder, okay,
That's
from the outside, no one inside.
Well, there it is. I mean, and those are some pretty good reasons, but those reasons pretty much discount a lot of everything else that he has been saying here with the. That's my view. Let's see what else got to say.
Get into suspectology, and people that, who could have been responsible. And
there's a even in his thing that he has up here, is that spelled correct? It's like a spell check even on his own video. I don't know, suspectology.
Why would sex be a factor in their deaths? That was never even brought up.
I think he's just trying to cover all aspects of a particular crime scene.
He covered murder in about 30 seconds there, and that was it. Everything else goes against that. And those are some of the early things that were actually brought up. And there's a lot of other reasons why you would think that this was a murder. How about number 4, Kenneth Maines? Number 4 is that there's no DNA evidence that David wrote anything on that wall. Number 5, there's no evidence that David wrote anything on the kitchen laptop. Number 6, there's no evidence that David shot that gun. We go on and on and on. There's a lot of more evidence. And it just, this is another thing where it's like, wow, you're really focused on certain things for your bias. You can say that you don't have a bias, and maybe you don't, but everything that you're writing here is a complete bias. And the things that you choose not to look at later on show your bias here. And that's fine. I mean, he's being hired for his view on this case, but don't act like you don't have a bias, and don't act like you're really looking into what could show that this was a murder. Because if that is true, there is a long list of things that you did not include in those points that you just brought up. And yet you focus on other things, on these small, minute details, but you're not focusing on what the actual documents say and what could prove that David was innocent, and therefore this was a murder, a triple murder, not a double murder suicide. So there's a lot of things that he leaves out.
There was a lot of things, you have to look at financial aspects of the Gray State and movies and David's greed, if he had any. I put down here, money is a possible reason.
Here we go.
Sex. I didn't see any indication of that. Revenge or anger. Yeah, it's possible someone who did not share David's anti-government beliefs could have a motive to murder him and his family. Someone who became angry over David's comments is probable, yet enough to drive them to murder him and his entire...
Oh, there's that photo you're looking for.
Showing the watch on his right hand.
It's in his video.
Oh my gosh.
You didn't have to go digging after all, Sophia.
All I had to do was just wait 10 minutes.
There it is. There's the watch.
Okay.
On the right hand. No bracelet, though.
I wonder if anybody brought that up to him. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
But in my opinion, it is not probable. David and Kamel must also be looked at under this.
It's not probable. Motive. The fact that the police say that there is no motive for David doing this, it is not probable that somebody else did.
Especially when there was motive for so many others.
Sure. But how could they not find motive for David Crowley and still accuse him of a double murder suicide?
Lazy detective work?
Yep.
And even lazier by this guy, by the fox catcher. I don't know. Catching a fox is really hard. I don't think he's good at that either.
Revenge anger is often a spontaneous event triggered by something that makes an individual react to the heat of the moment.
This goes back to what the Apple Valley police say in the Tom Lydon video that David snapped. They couldn't find anything else So they had the worst case scenario that they had. Well, shit, if we can't prove David did this or anything, we can always just go back and say that he snapped, right? We can always go back. Kenneth Maines is following that same line. Oh, he must have snapped. This wasn't planned. This wasn't a calculated thing. Even though everything David did in his life was calculated, here is the one uncalculated thing that David Crowley did, and is the most heinous crime that you could do, to kill your wife and kill your child and kill yourself. But no, he didn't plan it. It was out of character, but he did it. Okay, well then where is the motive? Well, we don't have a motive. Well, then you don't have any evidence that David did this.
And anyone who had even taken Psych 101 would know that there is no such thing as quote unquote snapping. It does not exist.
Where do they get that from?
It was, people have been saying it for a long time. I remember back in the 80s when I first started going to college and I started taking psychology classes, and in that was kind of what you would see in the movies and stuff, like all of a sudden somebody would just go to a snap and they start killing people. And so they want us to believe that this family is having a typical everyday routine, and then David just decided to get up for no reason. They can't figure it out and just get the gun and kill everybody. That is ludicrous. It does not happen.
Yeah. And if it does happen, if that did happen, they should have evidence of that. And they should not be discounting the evidence that proves otherwise.
Right. You would find the bullet with his blood on it. You would find the bullet with Rania's blood on it and hair, and you would find high velocity blood spatter. You wouldn't see all of the writing on the wall. It would be evident. But
Yeah.
again, it doesn't happen. People don't do that. It's not how your brain works.
Yeah.
Unless you're ultra.
You wouldn't have any missing DNA that we don't know where this DNA came from.
Unknown DNA.
Unknown DNA.
We can rule out the general public, but they're not saying they're ruling out somebody close to them, but it doesn't match anybody, but it's here. Okay, come on now.
All right. Well, Maines is buying into all of it.
Disgusting.
Hook, line, and sinker. Okay.
So those are the reasons, revenge and anger and money, that I feel that this could have triggered this incident. The time of death. We got into that with the timeline a little bit. I said, I believe this incident happened in the evening hours. Now, I deduced this from the Christmas lights and the dining room lights being on upon arrival of police. To further this deduction, we can look at the clothing the family was wearing. Most people will wear sweatpants.
The Christmas lights, because people turn those on and turn them off every day. I mean, once they're turned on, they're pretty much on. Yeah. They stay on. And if people are dead, they're going to stay on.
Right. Oh.
Unless they're on a timer or something like that. But we can see that there was no timer as far as we know.
In the evening, especially in the winter. Well, they wear them during the day too. So you can't fully say that that is the reason, but the lights being on makes me believe that it was evening time.
What? I mean, the bodies were found in the day. I don't know. All right.
I have my light on right now.
Yeah, my kids would leave theirs on all the time. I mean, it was like nonstop when it came to the holidays. Once those lights went on, especially inside the house. Yep, they stayed.
Well, I mean, the lights. If there were there lights on the Christmas tree? Because those lights were not on.
Right, they weren't on. It was the other lights that were around the house.
There was a kitchen light, according to the police reports. That's it.
Yeah, and it looked like they were taking things down, not
it did.
Getting ready to celebrate.
Yep.
And we have a 6-year-old in our house that turns on every light he comes in contact with. Every light.
Yep.
And so, yeah, it doesn't matter what time of day or night it is. They're on.
Yeah. Now there was one neighbor, according to the police reports, that said that there was a light that would go on every day or every night. So maybe that's what made some of us think, well, maybe this was on a timer or something. Mm-hmm. But if it's on a timer, that even goes even more against what he's saying here.
Yep.
The neighbor heard 3 rapid gunshots on a date sometime before New Year's Eve. He could not.
He did
Deduce that any
They
further.
did.
Yes, he did.
Before the 19th, somewhere between the 1st and the 10th, but not later than the 19th. He didn't read anything.
I think he may have like had a assistant, or I don't know. I don't want to speculate on what he did, but whatever he did is wrong here. That is wrong. So,
okay.
Well, he's talking about a different neighbor. He's talking about Alan Olson. So yeah, so Alan Olson.
Yes, but when you read these reports, nobody puts that date past the 19th. Nobody says anything was around Christmas.
No, Alan Olson does. They say because of when they were home around that time that it would have had to have been, and I forget exactly what it is. I have to go back to my book and look at it. But this is the one that it's between, I believe, Christmas Eve and New Year's Day, and that's a big gap. So they really don't know exactly when. But
so were they gunshots or were they fireworks?
Yeah.
They say three rapid fire shots, gunshots. Yeah. So Alan Olson is the only credible person that heard gunshot. The only neighbor that claims that they heard gunshots between Christmas Eve and more likely Christmas Day and New Year's Eve.
But again, were they fireworks or were they gunshots?
He says gunshots. He believes that they were gunshots.
Okay.
Yep. But 3, not 6.
And I mean,
that's the other thing.
But the whole thing is the decomp already proves that this incident that Alan Olson was talking about could not have been the one that happened to them. So the decomp rules this out.
And it's also, I mean, they only hear 3, right?
Yeah.
You should hear 6. Really, you should hear. Yeah, you should hear 6, maybe 7, but you should hear more than 3, and that's another interesting thing.
Yep.
He believes it was at night, but he cannot pinpoint the date that he heard 3 rapid shots. I believe this is most credible witness of hearing gunshots.
Yep.
And these are most likely the 3 shots.
I would agree with him. Absolutely. The only problem is he only heard 3. That means that's more evidence that people did not die at the same time. And if you have 3 bullets connected to Kamel, and you have people that are only reporting hearing 3 gunshots, 1 person, there's some issues there.
Shots that killed Kamel. But when did the other 3 shots take place? I cannot be confident in
And that's the thing. It wasn't 3 shots that killed her. Let me go back a little bit since I was talking over it.
Deduce that any further. He believes it was at night, but he cannot pinpoint the date that he heard 3 rapid shots. I believe this is most credible witness of hearing gunshots. And these are most likely the 3 shots that killed Kamel.
See, there weren't 3 shots that killed Kamel.
When did the other 3 shots take place?
There are 3 bullets with her hair, blood, and DNA.
Correct. So it's almost like, okay, so he understands that, but he doesn't understand that there were not 3 shots that killed Kamel, right? There's something wrong there.
Well, we know she has 2 headshot wounds plus another bullet that has her blood, hair, and DNA on it. So.
Right, but she was only shot twice.
Right? That's all because that's all they found left of her head. That they don't know.
That's all that the ME stated.
Yeah, they do know that they do see the 2, but they can't determine the other.
But there are 3 bullets with only her DNA, blood, hair, all that stuff. So.
Okay. All right, we'll go a few more minutes, and then definitely going to have to do another part to this.
I cannot be confident in reconstructing the sequence of shots that took place because of the lack of conflicting witnesses.
But this also makes it seem like, okay, so he believes she was shot 3 times, right?
Yeah.
According to what he's saying here.
accounts of when they heard possible gunshots. But in my opinion,
and so you have 2 other shots, one for David, one for Rania that nobody hears,
and one in the floor.
And one in the floor. And that's 6.
Event happened the evening of December 24th or the evening of December 25th. And most likely it was on December 25th because of David's Christian beliefs and the last Facebook post.
What? Because of his... That makes no sense there. Because of his Christian beliefs, that he's, this, you know what, I'm a Christian, this would be a great day to kill everybody. No, this would be a great day for somebody to frame him.
Yes.
This would be a great day for somebody, to come in and commit this crime and then blame him for it or something like that. But there's no Christian that's going to say, hey, this is my Lord and Savior's birthday. We can debate the birthday or whatever, but this is the day that we recognize. And this is a very important day to Christians. Mm-hmm. And you're going to kill your family and yourself on that day? That doesn't make any sense. That seems very, very odd to me.
I can tear apart his theory with just the autopsy reports. And yeah. I would love to have that opportunity.
Hopefully we can make that happen someday. We're going to shut this one down right there. I think that is a great place to stop here. And we will come back. Hopefully we can come back. I'm trying to think if I can come back next Sunday. I have the debate that probably won't happen on Friday, but maybe we can come back next weekend and do a part 3. It looks like we're gonna have like a 4-part thing here. But thank you both for joining me. And do you have any final words, any final thoughts? I'd like to get both of your views on that.
Catherine, would you like to talk about what you found in the autopsy reports real fast?
Yeah, briefly, we will be going over this because I'm assuming that Ken Maines hopefully will, because I have not seen this video. It's the first time I've seen it, so I don't know. We'll be bringing up the bodies. What the autopsy reports state is that David's body had marked autolysis. Kamel and Rania were simply in autolysis. Now, if you don't know what autolysis is, that's the very first stage of decomp where the body begins to break down and eat itself. And David was marked, meaning it was advanced. It was very noticeable. Kamel and Rania's was just listed as autolysis. The David's and Rania's autopsy was performed by the same person. So this is very important. The wording tells you David was dead longer. We will cover more of that later.
Thank you. I think it's just important. I mean, people need to hear it. So, the autopsy reports, the telephone records, and the blacklight reports are all located on Greg Fernandez's website, which is thegradestagewordpress.com. And you can find some of this information also in the group, up in the group files. So if you are interested in looking at it for yourselves, you're more than welcome to. You just have to download it, and it's all there. It's in black and white. Things that we discuss, especially Catherine and I, we try to back it up with actual proof, such as photos or the reports, because, I mean, that's all we have. We could sit here and make assumptions all day long, but it's not going to solve the case. We can think outside the box, but we have to be able to prove it in the end. But I just want to thank everybody who joined us in the live chat. I appreciate all your thoughts and your comments. And for those of you listening, please give a like. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And Catherine?
I just, again, don't know much what else to add. Just remember what we've covered so far is those weren't prints. There was no blood leading up to, away from, just some spots in the middle of the floor. David's feet were not mentioned to have blood. They were noted as being well kept and they looked very good. There's no motive there. We'll spend all day rehashing everything,
Mm-hmm.
but please understand that we researched this. We have been researching this for years. And so far, Mr. Maines, his report is lacking all over the place. But thank you again, like Sophia said, thank you everybody for joining. Thank you, Greg, for allowing us to be here with you. And we will definitely be here next time.
Greg?
Did he take off? Does he have to go take care of his kids?
He has the end of the stream.
I know. He's
We're
probably
just gonna
going,
sit here, chat.
those are girls, they'll talk a lot.
So,
But yes, keep in mind, there's unknown DNA there, DNA that will match one of them, but does not match anybody else. However, the vast majority of the population is excluded. Doesn't tell you who is included. It will only tell you who's excluded, but it doesn't match all the family members. That's important. What else did we talk about? Oh, the dog. The dog could have easily been put downstairs. There's feces downstairs. So while this event took place, the dog could have been locked in the basement.
mm-hmm.
How easy is that? Especially not saying it is, but if it were somebody that was known or had been to the house and the dog knew them, they could get the dog downstairs real easy. It doesn't take rocket science. And the fact that he was talking earlier about how everything was just so disheveled, so to speak. Again, keep in mind, David and Mitch Heil were selling off all their products. They were trying to get rid of everything. David and Kamel were getting ready to move to LA. So, or was it, gone through by the people who were there? Were they looking for something? Did they want to take some stuff with them? We don't know. All we can go by are photos in the journal and movie photos that they have. Their house was always very clean. So you compare what their house looked like and then to the crime scene. And that tells me that there was people there, like Greg was suggesting, maybe they were looking for something. Maybe they took it. Maybe they made the mess. But there's a lot more to this case than meets the eye.
When we're discussing DNA, all of the tests where they compared it to the population, the general population, it was the unknown population. So that leads me to believe that it could have been somebody close to them, because it only says unknown.
Yeah,
So,
it's like the general population. Yeah, they can exclude 99% of the general population, but they don't say that they can exclude a family member. And I'm not accusing a family. I need to state that I am not saying.
Yeah, but can I ask you a question on that? I know you've talked about this and we've covered it, but when they say that, the 99%, those are people that they have a DNA record of, like they don't have my DNA, right? So if I did it,
it's just comparatively speaking,
comparative.
It's just like a statistic.
It's just a computer generated percentage.
Right.
So,
but if they wanted to match a DNA to DNA, they would really need
because based on what they found, and how the DNA was created. Like my DNA is different from your DNA. So if they found mine and they recreated it in a lab, they could easily determine that you weren't, like say drinking out of my cup. It was only me drinking out of my cup, because based on how do you word this, on how everything, your DNA strands fit together. it is completely different. So based on what they found, there was similarities between all of them. Mm-hmm. So by that, they can rule out the vast majority of people. I bet I just confused everybody. I confused myself.
The profile.
Thank you. The profile. That's a good word.
You're welcome.
No, that's good. It's like when they talk about polls and things like that, like, oh, this poll says this poll says that. Like, I've never been polled. No one's ever polled me. Why am I being included in this? So that's kind of a simple view of it. But all right, well, I'll go ahead and shut this one down, and thank you everybody for joining us, and we'll try to come back here next week and continue this topic, this very important topic here that was only brought up by Kenneth Maines.
Thank you again to the live chat. I appreciate your comments.
Yeah, me too. Thank you all. Sorry if I missed anybody's comments too. One I missed this one. I'm sure I missed a few other ones.
And yeah, that's Joanna. That's exactly what we were saying.
Yeah,
that they were implying it.
Yeah, and maybe not necessarily to David. It could have been Kamel. I would have to go back and look, but it's the implication, correct? So we did infer by what they were implying that it was somebody close to them. But again, we can't prove that because no DNA tests were done, so we don't know.
Last question here.
So possibly they killed David for assault, fire, and torture. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
We don't know.
I don't know. I mean, there's so much evidence to just say, well, David didn't do this. I haven't even really gotten into.
Yeah, the only thing I can tell you with certainty, according to the autopsy reports, is they were not dead since Christmas. That David's decomp was a little bit further advanced than Kamel and Ranya's. That should tell you something. And they didn't die where they were found.
There you go. All right. Until next time, God bless you all.
Thank you, everybody.